Hello, everybody.
This is in the District Court of Butler County, Kansas, case entitled State of Kansas versus Taylor Parite. It's case number 2024 CR 473. Taylor Parite appears on his own Zoom, apparently from Monroe, Louisiana. James Watts appears as defense counsel. Brett Sweeney on behalf of the state of Kansas. This matter comes before the court at this time for sentencing. Court's docket notes indicate that Mr. Parite appeared before this court by Zoom back on March the 12th. At that time, the court determined that the defendant was under a federal tribal court detainer and had rehabilitation placement in Louisiana. The court rescheduled sentencing to today's date. Court ordered the defendant to comply with any assessment that was necessary and fully comply with the Louisiana program. We're here for sentencing today. The court does have a completed pre-sentence report compiled by Christine Donovan, pre-sentence investigator, who is present on this meeting. Ms. Donovan, before this escapes me, I want to go ahead and ask this question just regarding a detail on the face sheet. You list a begin date of jail time for 10/13, end date 10/15, but compute 1 day jail time credit. How did you reach that conclusion?
That was reported to me by the Butler County Jail, Your Honor.
All right. Counsel, I don't know exactly what the hours computation was. I just know how DOC looks at these journal entries, and if they see a start date on the 13th and an end date on the 15th, they're going to be inquiring whether that's 1 day or 2 days credit. This court is going to resolve any doubt in favor of the defendant in this case. We will proceed today as if this is a 2-day jail time credit case. I have no doubt regarding the accuracy of the information that Ms. Donovan has expressed, but regardless of the number of hours that were involved, 2 days will be granted based on prior time credit, and we'll proceed accordingly. I'll ask the state's attorney at this time, is there any objection to the criminal history, which is stated in this report?
None, Your Honor.
Any objection by the defense, Mr. Watts?
Your Honor, I have reviewed same with my client. We believe it is correct. We have no objection.
Court will adopt the criminal history score as stated in the report and finds that that score applicable to today's sentencing on the primary count is criminal history score I, and the court will proceed further accordingly. I'll ask at this time, Mr. Sweeney, do you know of any legal reason why sentence should not be pronounced in this case here this afternoon?
None, Your Honor.
Mr. Watts, are you aware of any such legal reason?
No, sir.
Taylor Parite, are you aware of a legal reason or any other good reason why we shouldn't go further with your sentencing today?
No, Your Honor.
We'll proceed further then. Counsel, I'm not aware that there's been a motion for a departure sentence or any other type of sentencing related motion to take up. Does the state have any motions to pursue?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Watts, does the defense have any such motions?
No, sir. Thank you.
Very well. Are there any victims or members of a victim's family who desires to address the court in relation to this sentencing?
Your Honor, again, my name is Ashley Kinman. I'm the social worker with Tunica Biloxi Tribe. I just wanted to reiterate that Taylor is currently on a detainer for treatment up to 12 months. I have received reports from his counselor there, and his intervention and his goals and objectives there. He has been on target and on task. He is working when he does have the time, when he is not in individual counseling or group counseling and group meetings. He has passed all of his drug screens and his attendance is on point.
Very well. Thank you for that information, Ms. Kim.
Yes, sir.
All right. We'll proceed further at this time then, and I'll ask for recommendations from counsel regarding an appropriate sentence for Taylor Parite, beginning with Brett Sweeney on behalf of the state of Kansas.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, the state is recommending for the primary count, which is count 2, the identity theft felony, we're recommending the standard mid-box 8 months in the Department of Corrections with the corresponding 20% good time percentage and the 12-month post-release supervision duration. the state will go ahead and acknowledge the 2 days of jail time credit, given 13 to the 15. Your Honor, there is another count, the theft, which is Class A misdemeanor. The state's going to go ahead and recommend 12 months in the Butler County Jail. Would ask that run concurrent with the 8 months on count 2, and that looks like that's pursuant to the plea agreement that's been reached between the state and defense counsel. The presumption here is presumptive probation. The state is going to go ahead and recommend that with a community corrections placement for a period of 18 months. It looks like all of the conditions that are listed within the PSI appear to be appropriate. I guess I would draw special attention to no contact with the victim. Everything else appears to be pretty standard. I'm sure the court will go over that in some detail. As far as costs and fees associated with the case, Your Honor, the state, I guess, primarily is recommending $853 in restitution, and that appears to be an amount that was taken from the victim's account. Additionally, the state is recommending court costs, any supervision fees that there might be, a $200 DNA fee for DNA database, as well as bids and attorney's fees, if appropriate. Additionally, I would note that the PSI has noted that he's got maybe some other outstanding cases, maybe out of a parish in Louisiana, or it sounds like we've got an update on the Tunica Biloxi tribal situation. But I did just want to point that out. That's all I have, Your Honor.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. Mr. Watson, your recommendations regarding an appropriate sentence here?
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, in large part, join the state's recommendations. We pled to counts 2 and 3. Would as to count 2, let me pull it up here again. As to count 2, would recommend the standard range of 8 months in the Department of Corrections. Yep, that's it. And with the good time and post release as previously noted. Judge, as to count 3, Judge, I'm going to actually ask the court to recommend a 6-month underlying sentence on count 3. And the only reason for that, of course, if they're running concurrent, is to avoid, should he have to serve that time, to overstay that time. It seems to make no sense to get out of the Department of Corrections. If he has to serve that, then come back and serve time in county jail. We'd have no objection to the restitution. I spoke with my client about the restitution figure, and it's my understanding he has no objection to that restitution figure.
Mr. Watts, did you reach a plea agreement where you knew the state was going to be recommending 12 months on count 3?
Judge, I was just going through my email with Ms. Norris and going through that plea agreement, and what I have in my email is plea to counts 2 and 3. I don't have in my notes a specific recommendation as to time on the counts. If Mr. Sweeney's notes, or if he has some notes from Ms. Norris that are otherwise, I simply don't have any notes to that effect one way or the other.
And Your Honor, if I may, and I apologize, to the extent that the court's asking the state, I don't have notes to that. That was the one kind of question mark that I had. It's pretty standard for the court to recommend, for the state to recommend 12 months. And so that was just kind of a standard recommendation.
Thank you, counsel, for your clarification. All right, you may continue further, Mr. Watts.
I have nothing else, Your Honor. I don't think I need to add anything else.
How much are your fees in the representation of the client?
Judge, this would be billed to bids at $1,100.
Thank you. At this time, the court will address the defendant, Taylor Parikh, personally, and I'll ask him if he has any statements that he wishes to make in mitigation of punishment or anything further that you would like to present to the court. Mr. Parikh?
I would just like to say, I was in an addiction real bad, and, I kind of did some things that I'm not proud of, and I know that I will have to suffer consequences, and just trying to get it behind me, just trying to get back on the right path, and just going to give it to God and continue to do the right thing.
Very well, Mr. Parikh. Mr. Parikh, there's some things about this case that are very atypical. Number one, I don't like sentencing a defendant on a felony case remotely, I want them immediately accountable to our court, our jail, our sheriff's office, our probation department the day that they're sentenced. Further, if the court does grant a probation sentence, I want them not only to start their probation locally, I want them to be in a local treatment program that's not only accountable to this court, but is close enough to the court that I'm familiar with them. We don't
Yes,
have
Your Honor.
those circumstances here. But every once in a while, Mr. Parikh, there's a special set of circumstances involving a defendant which calls the case to be treated differently than the typical case. This, in this court's view, is one of those cases. The court hereby establishes count 2 as the base sentence in this case for the offense of identity theft, a severity level 8 non-drug, non-person felony in which the defendant has a criminal history score of I, thus placing him in grid box 8I. The court hereby sentences the defendant to the standard term of 8 months in the custody of the Secretary of Corrections of the state of Kansas. On that sentence, the defendant may earn up to 20% of good time credit and would be subject to 12 months of post-release supervision. The court has considered but declines to impose a fine on that particular count. Moving to the additional offense of theft in count 3, a Class A non-person misdemeanor. The court imposes 6 months in the Butler County Jail and runs that time concurrently with the time on the felony count. The controlling sentence in this case, Mr. Parikh, is 8 months in the custody of the Department of Corrections. In other words, 8 months prison sentence with a 6-month jail sentence running concurrent to it. The court finds that in grid box 8I on the primary count, this is a presumptive probation offense under Kansas law. There's been no departure motion or case set before this court that would indicate a different result is called for here. This court will grant the defendant 18 months probation to be supervised by community corrections. I made some references earlier, Mr. Parikh, about your case being atypical, in other words, different than the norm.
Yes,
One
Your
thing
Honor.
that you've got Ashley Kinman advocating for you, and you're in a program that makes so much sense. In other words, you're kind of in a confined, monitored treatment program where you're going to get the help you need and hopefully the behavior changes and changes in judgment that you very desperately need so that you don't just keep getting in trouble as a young man. This is a
Yes.
program that I wish that we had more access to here in Kansas. I'm not about to interfere with what appears to be a very successful program entry and continuation that you've demonstrated. I
Yes,
was
Your
quite
Honor.
curious as to what the report was going to be today on your participation in this program, and it appears to be nothing but favorable. I hope you keep it that way, Mr.
Yes, Your
Parikh.
Honor.
And you do not backslide on me, because quite frankly, you can be brought back to Kansas on a warrant and face our Kansas prison time. But I
Yes,
would
Your Honor.
rather see you be in Louisiana and be successful there in this long-term treatment and, to an extent, confinement program. So the court will essentially be directing that the probation that's been granted in this case by community corrections be monitored remotely at the current time, as long as he is in the program that he's in. I think we're going to have some interstate compact paperwork and procedures that have to be followed. And I trust you would agree with that, Ms. Ashenfelter?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Would it be of assistance at all if I kept Mr. Parikh on the Zoom meeting after we conclude the sentencing proceeding?
Yes, Judge, that would be great.
All right. So Taylor, even though I might recess court at the end, you stay on the meeting to meet with the community corrections officer, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Conditions will include reporting to that officer essentially remotely as approved at this juncture. You have to observe all laws. You must successfully complete the program that you're in. You may be required by our local office to complete another alcohol or drug evaluation, a substance abuse evaluation. It would seem to be duplicative of what you're already doing, but if they require it, you'll do it.
Yes,
Shall
sir.
not possess or consume alcohol or illegal drugs while on probation. At your supervising officer's request and at your own expense, you shall submit to random breath, blood, and urinalysis testing, perform any community service work pursuant to program requirements. To the extent feasible, you must gain and maintain employment throughout your probationary term. In other words, if you're not confined, Mr. Parikh, you need to be working to earn a living.
Yes, Your Honor.
You shall notify your supervising officer of any changes in your employment, residence, phone number, or email address within 24 hours of any such change taking place. Discharge from the current program that you are in is also going to require immediate notice to your Kansas Community Corrections Officer. I sure hope you don't get kicked out of there, Mr. Parikh.
Yes, sir.
Shall
I'm
have
not.
no contact with the victim in this case. Submit your DNA to the KBI data bank and be responsible for the $200 cost of the test. Abide by any curfew or travel restrictions which are placed upon you by your officer. Follow all standard conditions of probation. Not have in your possession firearms or dangerous weapons. Avoid disreputable characters and places. And make monthly payments on your obligations in a manner acceptable to the court. Court will be ordering you to pay a felony docket fee, felony probation fee, community corrections fee, the $200 DNA fee that I referred to earlier, and $853 in restitution to the victim. I will waive all bids assessments in this case. Court finding that Mr. Parikh, given his current situation, is not likely to generate enough financial resources to pay bids attorney fees. I will waive those. We've already dealt with the issue of jail time credit. I will repeat it. 2 days of jail time credit shall be reflected by the sentencing journal entry in this case. Mr. Parikh, at some point in the future, you may have the right to seek expungement of one or more of these offenses. Certain statutory limitations do apply. If you have any questions about expungement rights in the future, you can address those to a Kansas lawyer, and I'm sure get your questions answered. Under certain limited circumstances, a criminal defendant may have the right to appeal their convictions to an appellate court having jurisdiction. And if you are unable to pay the cost of an appeal, the defendant may request the court to appoint a lawyer to represent them on appeal and to direct that the defendant be supplied with a transcript of trial court proceedings. Pursuant to KSA 22-3608C, Mr. Parikh, you, the defendant, have 14 days after this judgment in court to file any notice of appeal with the clerk of the district court of Butler County, Kansas. You do have the right to appeal this sentence if the court has ruled adversely to you at this hearing. And I'll remind you that there's prohibitions against a convicted felon possessing a firearm, and there are losses of certain civil rights, such as the right to vote, until your sentence is fully discharged. All right, we had a lot of ground to cover here, Mr. Sweeney. Are you aware of any sentencing related matter that the court has not yet addressed?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. I'm struggling a little bit here with an additional probation condition here in Kansas. Ms. Kinman, what would his expected earliest possible release date from your program be?
Your Honor, we, with it being in tribal court, we have the liberty to extend. His original was 12 months, but we do have the ability to extend that to 18 months if necessary. Because the crime that he committed was not only in our county, but also on the reservation. And so they have merged those two together, and the county has allowed the tribe to take care of and monitor it because we just have more resources. So, and I would get with Christy on that. Any other recommendations or requirements need be, the judge here will be cooperative and eager to assist and have him attend a longer engaged treatment services. But ultimately, we will follow him for at least 24 months.
All right, Mr. Parikh, I'm going to make a specific probation condition in your Kansas case that you have to successfully complete the tribal court program in Louisiana. You wash out of that program, it's a probation violation here.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
you've got even more incentive now to successfully complete that program, because that wouldn't be not only messing up in Louisiana, you'd be messing up in Kansas as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But I have every reason to believe, Mr. Preet, that you're going to be successful. We won't even have to worry about that.
Yes, sir. I sure will.
And I know that you're done committing crimes like Ms. Kinman was talking about, or what was involved here, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's a good answer. I would have expected that answer, Mr. Preet. You've obviously thought about it. But now you just need to do it. You need to do it.
Yes, sir. That's right.
I'm not going to tell you that the road that you're on is going to be easy. This is a long-term program, and you're going to be putting up with a lot of rules, a lot of requirements, and maybe even a degree of loss of freedom. But I think in the long run, Taylor, you're going to look back at this at some point in the future and realize how very valuable a time this was in your life.
Yes,
So
sir.
you continue to embrace the program and do well in it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. I'll ask Mr. Watson, Mr. Sweeney collectively, between the two of you, is there anything further that I need to address here or any clarification needed?
None that I need, Your Honor.
If I may, Judge, only one, and I think you about 90% covered it. It sounds like we have a probationary period here of 18 months. It sounds like it is entirely possible, although not a given, that he may complete his program down there in Louisiana before that 18 months. Do I understand that correctly?
It sounds like that's a possibility.
Okay. Should that be the case, I presume the court would require him to report here in Kansas upon his release from that program in Louisiana. Would that be correct?
Christy? I've already ordered him to have to report to Christy immediately. But
well, I guess the flip side of that, Judge, is we're already done an interstate compact, so that may not be necessary.
well, I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work with a tribal court being involved, but Christy, can you give any further direction from the Community Corrections Department?
Your Honor, as long as he, from what I understand, as long as he is going through the interstate compact, he shouldn't have to come back here to complete that time. I could be wrong though.
Okay.
Just remember that if you leave that program, Taylor, you've got to immediately report that to the Community Corrections Department here in Kansas. So
Yes,
they're
sir.
advised at all times what your status is and what your residence is.
And Your Honor, we can extend that to, and like I said, my hope, he was a probation, a detainer for 12 months, but I think even in conversating with Taylor and the judge, there would be no concern for him to execute the 18 months with no problem. His desire is not to come back to this local county or parish that he's in, to reside in the area where his treatment support team resides. So I don't foresee if there's any problems, Christy and I can communicate and we can coordinate and work. I hate for him to have to go to Kansas for that when we can allocate his treatment services locally, if that adheres to the court standards.
It certainly does, Ms. Kinman. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. Christy Ashenfelder from Community Corrections. Do you need any further clarification regarding the court's orders?
No, Judge. Thank you.
Ms. Donovan, thank you for your work on the case. Ms. Kinman, again, thank you for your support and your input to this court.
Absolutely. Thank you for allowing me.
Your Honor, do I need to amend the jail time on the PSI?
Not necessarily. As long as the journal entry of sentencing reflects 2 days, the court would be satisfied.
Thank
I
you.
know you submitted the 1 day in good faith, so I don't think we need to amend that. Okay. All right, then. If there's nothing further, then the Taylor Preet matter is currently in recess. We can stop recording.
Be safe, be well, sleep sweet, and much love.